you mangy dogs. Swab the decks and hoist the sails. The guns on board be needing some proper manning. Pieces of 8 and a fine wench on your arm. If your work be not too shoddy. Careful not to flounder too badly, though, or you may have to dance the hempen jig as we see you to Davy Jones. Jeffy, my boy, on with the show.
Live streaming via YouTube around the world in conjunction with both Skype and the OBS open broadcasting software. Welcome everybody to episode number 140 of Pirate Radio Podcasts. I'm your host as always, Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jeffy Ryder, sailing alongside me here today in the shotgun position, none other than Vinny from Brooklyn. Before we turn the focus over to Vinny and have him engage us here regarding this week's topic, just say straight off the top here that this week we're going to work on assembling. We have worked on assembling a handful of various personalities from around the world to discuss the history and the impact of Buddhism throughout Asia and beyond. From the Silk Roads to India to the history of Buddhism in the West, there's clearly a lot of ground to cover this week. As if all this wasn't enough to try and jam-pack into this week's approximate 90-minute live stream, a brief overview and discussion of its core philosophy, principles, and tenets, including various institutional forms, schools, and traditions will also likely find their way into the mix. So, Buddha's birthday, according to what DuckDuckGo has told us here, is observed on April 8th, 2019, which it's also interesting to note how in Korea here, I believe it's May 5th, in fact, we have a Red Day. That's a national holiday, just in the same way that, things like Christmas are taken off, of course, too, out of respect for the large contingency of Christian Bible-believing type individuals who inhabit the peninsula. So, yes, these Red Days are great, and well, the history of Buddhism in Korea goes back quite a long ways, of course. And we're going to get into that along with everything else that we've just addressed here right off the top as soon as we can. A whole 90 minutes or more, hopefully. No after show this week, simply because I've got to head out the door. There's a group of Korean musicians who will be waiting for me, presumably, at a local elementary school. We've got our last little practice we're going to try to squeeze in here before we head off tonight and put together a live performance of sorts. We have 3 songs altogether lined up and ready to go. A little bit of ABBA, along with a couple of Korean classic folk song covers. So, looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. Vinny, we're just talking in the just pre-show there, which really wasn't much. Just caught you at the last second, but so far it's just you and me. Bit of a struggle here this week, and sometimes you kind of strike out more or less. Although Aaron Wadsworth was supposed to be dropping by, there were a couple of others who. One actually just said that he would prefer to remain a listener and spectator of sorts, so we're going to have to leave it at that. But yeah, you were saying you don't know a whole heck of a lot about Buddhism or Hindu philosophy, Indian philosophy, and that sort of thing when it comes right down to it.
Yeah, I'll tell you. You see, it's interesting. Being a jack of all trades, when you run into certain subjects that you don't become fluent in, or at least familiar in. So Buddhism, as far as Buddhism goes, I have an idea of the tenets, but beyond that, I couldn't tell you any intricacies of Buddhism. I mean, I generally regard it as a good philosophy. I can tell you that. I don't have any issue with Buddhism per se, and I imagine I shouldn't have, right? It's not something evil in any regard. I believe it's good.
It's sure interesting to note how you don't find too many, other than the Myanmar region at the moment. It's a bit of a hot spot, of course, but
Yes.
Outside of that, you don't hear of too many Buddhist-sponsored terror attacks or acts of violence of any sort, really, because reason being that goes entirely against the whole ethos of what it means to be a Buddhist, really. One of the three poisons, and I myself, very lazy Buddhist. I wish I could do more as far as historical knowledge and particulars regarding the world view. I think the Germans, what do they call it? Weltanschauung. I can't. I'm probably just mangled that one, but yeah, something along those lines, I believe, which means worldview, Weltanschauung, and we're going to do our best here, though, over the course of the next approximate 90 minutes or whatever we manage to put together here. The history and the various philosophical tenets, once again, any cultural particulars or what have you. So running a little bit in the red here at this particular moment, not sure why. It should be no problem, though. We did manage over the last couple of weeks to bounce back and reestablish a largely stable live stream and way of doing this, of course. So I hope everybody is enjoying the slideshow we put together, mostly just pictures we assembled via simple DuckDuckGo search.
Yeah, we're looking at some of the kids right now. They're very nice.
The little Buddhist monks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of those.
And the girls are in parade.
Pardon me?
No, the girls are in parade right now.
Right. Yeah, sure. I don't know too much about that myself either, believe it or not, other than there are the lantern parades, and they do adorn themselves in the traditional clothing. My wife actually just recently was she was wonderful enough to present me with a set of traditional Korean clothing, basically. It's like it's called hanbok, which is just traditional Korean clothes, essentially made of hemp, usually, believe it or not. Hemp's
excellent.
And industrial hemp. They haven't outlawed that yet, at least. So no indication or idea what the future.
It's a shame that it's outlawed here in the United States.
Pardon me?
Even though I'm outlawed in the United States because of William Randolph Hearst and the DuPont family. Yeah, we all know that, but it's coming back, and this is what we need to revitalize America. This is what will make America great again. We already discussed it.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So, and it's very, an integral and essential part of living just on this planet, of course, too. So the Buddha himself, as far as the whole issue of weed was concerned, the bottom line is, are people suffering? That's the only question you need to ask. The Zen approach essentially is, if somebody is thirsty, you give them a drink. If they're hungry, offer them some food, a sandwich or what have you. If they lack shelter, you provide that for them for whatever time is necessary, and so on and so forth. So yeah, if weed is what it's going to take to help relieve people of their suffering, you have every right to do so, to choose and pursue that course of action, of course, to work on remedying the situation. So But
Oh,
suffering.
especially
Go ahead.
especially since now the Rockefeller experiment has proven an abject failure. I think everyone knows that right now, and that we need to get back to traditional, real medicine. We need to get back to the Asclepius, and we pass it the caduceus. Right? That's the monetary version of medicine, which has nothing to do with healing, has only to do with profits, and we abhor profits over people.
You know, it's too bad we couldn't have had Todd Jackson drop by and actually take part in this week's live stream. We just got in touch with him a little late, as it were. We were scrambling here, pretty much doing what we could. All hands on deck, as always. So
Yeah.
he's out of Vegas, and he actually has joined us in the past to, I think it was episode 60, as a matter of fact, which I'm not sure how far back that even goes. It might be in a year or two now. But he's great as far as this whole business of Greco-Buddhism, which a lot of people don't know about. You're talking about the Asclepius or Caduceus. He knows a fair deal, I'm sure, about these matters. What exactly are they, and can they? It kind of relates, does it not, in some ways, to the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm?
See, that's the whole thing. I think what happened is the Hippocratic Oath has been suborned by the adherents of the Caduceus, because the Hippocratic Oath was part of the Asclepius. It's all about healing, right? And it can't be the same Hippocratic Oath. There's got to be some permutation in the word somehow, so it doesn't mean what it says. Or simply the whole oath doesn't mean what it says. Sort of like the Patriot Act doesn't mean what it says. It's the opposite. It's jumbo shrimp.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's these things. They sound good on the surface, don't they? The Freedom Act.
Yeah.
Ooh, freedom. Hey, who wouldn't vote for the Freedom Act? Devil's in the details.
That's a no-brainer.
Nobody reads it, of course, and it turns out that the Freedom Act authorizes and requires everyone to go directly to their nearest FEMA camp, or else kind of deal. But it's a Freedom Act. So, yeah, look, man, it's why I call it the Unpatriot Act. I don't want to get too sidetracked, and we are here.
Yeah,
obviously.
I just totally think that for our fun.
Big shout out to, looks like we've already hit that magical 10-person number, so that's great. Seems like there's a few people out there who take an interest in the history of Asia, Buddhism, the Silk Roads. We're going to get into that a little more here over time.
Hey,
hopefully.
Joe says you should bring yourself up a little bit.
Well, I don't know. It looks good here on this end, and I've tried to do so.
Sounds good to me too.
Yeah, I'll just go in and check one more of the settings we've got here. I could maybe do it. Well, we're almost. There we go. We're pretty much, we have it about as loud as we can here, as far as my mic is concerned.
Okay, let's see what Joe thinks.
I don't know. I think
Hi,
that's
Joe, Tommy, Nethead, Svetlana, and Mr. A. Good evening, everyone. Good morning. Good day to you all.
We have 10 Buddhas that have dropped by and joined us here this week. That really is the way of looking at things too. People ask, who is the Buddha? And the answer simply is you. You are the Buddha.
Buddha bless us.
Well, that's everyone. That's a Mahayana tradition, of course, too. There are a multitude of traditions. The Hinayana, if people want to look into this, was actually one of the original forms of Buddhism. It means some would say narrow path. It's the way of the elders, the Theravadan. That's Theravadin, Thera, which is interesting how close it sounds to terror. But also, Theta, also, let's not forget, means earth. So
that's right.
It seems to be, there is a big push, there has been for quite a few years now, of course, the war on nature and the earth. And speaking of which, the first thing that Buddha did when he attained enlightenment out there in the forest, or I guess jungles of northern India. What was the first thing that he did? He reached down and touched the ground. Jim Morrison and the Doors, what do they sing about? Not to touch the earth. You know, that's kind of interesting. But I think, do you realize, or can you see the significance of that act? Vinny, do you, like, having that supposedly attained enlightenment, whatever that happens to be. Although if you think about it, let's not forget enlightenment. Is that a light bulb going off in somebody's head, like a eureka type moment? In Zen, I guess they call it satori. Or is it more a case of just taking a load off, lightening? You know, I know myself, there's times where I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. I take a lot on, man. But at the same time, you know, that is the way of the Bodhisattva, believe it or not. People want to look into that. Maybe they've heard the Steely Dan song, Bodhisattva, you know, that kind of deal. But there's a lot to be said about it, of course. And that's the thing. It's you as a Bodhisattva are required to take it all in and deal with it. There's a lot of pain and suffering out there. So it's not always... It's not an easy task or chore. It's you know, no wonder. Well, I mean, the thing is, at the same time, in the face of it all, if you can cut through everything that's out there, and within yourself too, a lot of that inner space going on as well. Let's not forget, and just lighten yourself, maybe with light from the sun or whatever natural light happens to manifest within all of us as humans. That in conjunction with, once again, just taking a load off and you know, not feeling so encumbered or weighed down by it all. You know, I think that's a really important step. A lot of people can't do it, of course, because of where they're at, the headspace, the demons that haunt their psyche. You know, there's that scar. There's a really great word, samskara. Is a Sanskrit. Samskara. Well, and I've talked to actually Kaiser Schuff about this, because as a military guy, you're out there in the field and you've seen a lot of really intense stuff firsthand up front. And it leaves its mark. It's no wonder there's so many vets coming back living with PTSD. You know, these things leave their impact, and even though it's an ancient Sanskrit word, samskara, you know, there's a connection there, I do believe. We could get a little more into that, actually, the language connections. I've brought this up in the past, and you know, I'm quite serious when I talk about how in Korea, India, via the Sanskrit, and also with English, there are just countless parallels or little coincidences, shall we say, or maybe just a little more than coincidence, what we find occurring linguistically across all three of those language groupings: English, modern day English, Sanskrit, and Korean. It's quite fascinating. So if anybody out there in the comment area wants me to go more into that, I will. But other than that, we'll leave it there and just kind of turn things back over to Vinny. Go ahead, my friend.
Well, why don't I bring up one now, actually, about samsara. Right. Now, if you've ever read Mark Wade's work, Mark Wade, one of the things he came up with was irredeemable, and irredeemable was it was a comic about a superhero called the Plutonian, I believe. And this is all from memory. It's just coming to me now. The Plutonian who was a Superman level character, and what happens is he screws up because he's selfish. You know, he's not like Clark Kent, who pretty much gives all to be like the protector of Earth. Well, the Plutonian is not so giving. He kind of wants things the way he wants them. So he screws up one time and ends up killing a bunch of children, or letting a bunch of children die because of his bad actions. And what happens is, at one point, he is forced to use his laser vision, his heat vision, to cut into the back of the head of his assistant, who is invulnerable. but not to a laser vision lobotomy. And his assistant's name is Samsara.
How about that? Well, isn't that something? It's a work of fiction too, I guess. Then obviously,
Yeah, complete fiction, as far as I know. Yeah.
So, but hey, samsara is samsara is nirvana, as it is so often said. For anyone who has read Buddhist literature of any sort, people have recognized this over the years. I suppose Adolf Hitler most famously, and we could go there if people would like to as well. This business of Aryanism, what it really means historically, how deep those roots are. Here's a little hint, people, in case you weren't aware, but Hitler and the Nazis were not the first people to come up with this whole business of what it meant to be an Aryan. And
no, they were taught that. That's right. They were taught that.
The swastika as well too. They subverted, as with ISIS we've seen recently, and many other examples. Gay is another term that's been hijacked. Progressive, there's another one. It's endless. That's what these people do. Some of them out there, the golems of the new age, the new millennia. The Antifa crowd and so forth. The cultural Marxists and whatnot, but. You're going to add something more to it. I know we're kind of jumping around here a little bit, and we got a lot of great activity taking place there in the chat area. That's one of the reasons we stick with YouTube, even though we would love to go, say, with D Live or some other means. In fact, that reminds me, minds.com, before I forget, let's not let this one just slip by the wings, or just pass on by our radar with nobody addressing it. But the gathering option over on minds.com, people, if you have your minds.com account in place, I'd like to look into that a little more, because I think, I've
heard it's fantastic. Anyway, I've heard it's fantastic. Engaged.
Yeah. So it's a question, though, of just the comments really is what I'm most interested in, frankly, because it's a reciprocal sort of, how would you describe it exactly? Because it's an
interaction. Yeah, it's interaction. It's like no other. That's what it is.
Like an audience is they're we're kind of, they're soundboards. We're soundboards to one another, almost just bouncing back.
It's the next step in pop-up television is what it is. Because pop-up television is what you would get if you couldn't respond to what's coming up on the screen. Usually pop-up television, people type in stuff, but the people on the screen don't get to interact with it at all because they don't get to see it. Here we get to interact with it, so it's a whole different thing. It's the next best step. I mean, coming after that, I'm not sure what it will be, which maybe it'll just be television where screens just pop up every time someone talks, they're on the screen. And maybe that's how it's going to go. I don't know.
Sure. Well, we could definitely ramp things up a little further here on our end of the operation as well, too. We're pretty old school once again, and that's just the way we roll, man. That's the way we do business here.
I watched a snail crawl across a razor and live.
Colonel Kurtz out of Apocalypse Now, that came courtesy of, I guess it was Tommy Shutter, was it not?
That's correct. Yep, that's correct.
So, a little bit of just a comment here via Zane IAV, who it's good to see him dropping by here, join us this week. But the comment that he's leaving here in the chat area section is, although light is a frequent symbol in Buddhism and Hinduism, not to mention Christianity and Islam, etc., it's interesting that nirvana basically means blowing out the flame or fire. Yeah, I guess that is correct, more or less. He's kind of onto something there, that there's an extinction. The five skandhas really is, and I can't really, that's one of the reasons we did reach out to a few people, and even a monk type character who said he would be more interested in perhaps just taking a look at how things go down this week via the wings. So, and of course, Todd Jackson out there in Vegas. Aaron Wadsworth, not sure what happened to him exactly, but, you know, I'd imagine he'll get back to us here at some point. People, they've got their schedules, they've got their health issues, you know, people have got their personal issues as well, too, and just any number of different things. But, so I'm going to give it my best shot here, just Nirvana blowing out. You know, people have to look into a little more themselves. But what I will say, Nietzsche talked about how his famous claim was that Buddhism was a negation of the will. That's the translation in English, at least. Who knows exactly what he said in German. But which I take exception to, actually, because, you know, it takes, as far as I'm concerned, it takes a hell of a lot of will and determination to be able to sit, just even for a few minutes a day, to sit and quietly meditate, kind of like what it says, I believe, in the book of Matthew, what Jesus, what he suggests people do, that if they want to maybe get a little closer to God, or I forget the exact phrasing, but you be not like the hypocrites. Matthew 5 or 6. It's a pretty famous passage. These hypocrites that go out parading around and showing off how virtuous and righteous they are with their phylacteries, I believe is one of the terms that was used, and so forth. But he said, don't be like these hypocrites. Just go quietly into your room, sit down, shut the door, and essentially meditate was what he was encouraging people to do. That does take a lot of will. There's not too many people who can do it. And really the whole point, of course, is to watch the monkey mind at play, the way the chatterbox, as I like to refer to it, jumps around, the way it just endlessly spews out all sorts of nonsense. Of course, the question is, are we going to, how much are we going to fuel this nonsense? Are we going to add more fuel to the fire, or are we going to take steps and measures within ourselves to, what did Jesus say? So once again, Satan, get behind thee. I love that one. Right. And Buddha too. It's interesting. Buddha too, with his what was it? How many days in the I'm not sure if it's forest or jungles once again of northern India, but the same kind of deal with Mara, the what the Koreans here call Mawang, the king of evil, Mawang. But yeah, Mara, same kind of deal where it's like, look, Mara. And the last temptation, of course, as I recall, was these really hot bitches, these hot chicks that Mara sent to him to try and have him cave in, basically fall into the trap and find himself ensnared by these lusty desires. So, but that was one of the reasons he left the castle in the first place, of course, and turned his back on his what had been his birthright, I suppose, to as was prophesied at his birth, that the Buddha would either become a great temporal worldly leader, military type head of state, or choose a more spiritual path. So yeah, it's interesting to see how things unfolded on that front, of course. But now, well, let's see. Svetlana, we want to give you a big shout out, of course, too. Thank you so much for your recent support. You've been really great over there on minds.com, and we appreciate your tokens. It would be great if more people would, do that sort of thing and help to provide us with a little boost power. That's really what it boils down to in a lot of cases, just something that we can get out there to help add a little more wind to our sails and get the show recognition out there a little more widely. So, yeah, very much appreciated. I think she's based out of Alberta, as a matter of fact, originally of one of the Slavic nations. I'm not sure which one exactly. It escapes me at this particular moment. I know she has told us in the past. Maybe she could remind us there in the chat area. But yeah, it's really, really, really great. And in fact, that reminds me, the first step on the path to wisdom, just keeping things on point and on track here, with in accordance with this week's theme, of course, episode 140 of Pirate Radio Podcast. Myself, Jaffe Ryder, along with our co-host of the week, Vinny from out of Brooklyn. But that the first step on the path to wisdom, Vinny, any idea what that is?
Well, for the guy who misconjugated your in the chat, I should probably not respond, but instead we're just going to flow with it. We're gonna have some fun tonight. That's all. We're gonna celebrate Buddha's birthday, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Oh, was there a troll or somebody jumped in there and was?
No, we're just gonna have fun with it, regardless.
I never
even if there are trolls, we're just gonna rock and roll, guys.
I never saw anything at all, but I don't. Trolls are fine. That's not a problem. So, anyways, who are you talking about?
Oh no. We're just having fun anyway. No, I typed your money's no good here, but I misconjugated your. I used the with the apostrophe.
All right.
Well, it's fast and having much fun.
We're about 30 minutes into things here this week. It's amazing how time flies when you're having fun, especially here out on the decks of the Robin Hood. So, what I was going to say, maybe you missed the question though, Vinny. What is the first step on the path to wisdom? Any idea?
Yes, no, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't miss the question, but of course, given the answer, I get the preamble made me forget the answer to the question. The first step to wisdom is listening.
Okay, that's a good one. But no, actually, well, you can, if you like, you can run with that. But the Buddhist tradition, it's what's known as the 5 or 6 paramitas. Paramil, I think, is how they say it in Korean. Para meaning to cross over. And that's another example of how in Sanskrit, English, and I think maybe Korean to some extent too, they use that same word, paramil, sort of deal, that this idea, concept of crossing over or going beyond. It's like Nietzsche's Superman. Right? Nietzsche's Superman ideal, the Bodhisattva. Nietzsche himself was a closet Buddhist. A lot of people don't know this, of course. I looked into it, researched it during my time in university, and it was one of those things that I think because of just the agenda that he had in place, that he, I guess
most of the people who embody things actually never, who emphasize about things, they never embody them themselves, and it's just kind of weird sometimes.
Well, he was a closet Buddhist, that off the record, behind the scenes, that he privately very much was enthralled or enamored and attracted to Buddhism as it stood back in the day during his time, the turn of the entry into the 20th century, the late 19th century. Let's get that straight. So yeah, he passed away. I think it wasn't in 1900 or something like that. I'm just kind of ballparking things, but anyways, okay. Well, no. The first step on the path to wisdom is generosity. Generosity. There, that's how you start, people. It's called dana, which is, you look at the word donor, dana, right. Donor. The paramita, going beyond, going that extra mile, going above and beyond the call of duty. And so it's the first step on the path to wisdom. Do you know what is the last step on the path to wisdom? Any idea?
No.
In the Buddhist tradition, It's actually wisdom itself.
Oh, very good. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's actually called jhana. Jhana, Jna. What the hell? How do you spell that now? Jnana kind of deal. So, which is, if a lot of scholars, people that are interested in etymology, philology, linguistics, and so forth, that they have made the connection between this and it's the root cognate for knowledge, gnana,
Yes.
gnana or gnosis. So,
Like Ganesh.
right.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, something along those lines, I guess. But yeah, there you go. And so these are things that we cultivate over the course of our lives, or ignore, I suppose, and do the opposite. And because really all the Buddha said, his teachings in a nutshell: do good, cease evil, and cultivate a pure mind. That's what he said during his dying moments. It's quite simply, just to make it clear for the record, just remember these things, my people. Well, I'm not sure how he dressed his people as that kind of deal, because his disciples or what have you. But yeah, it was really that simple. So enjoying the slideshow here very much, very colorful. Some temple processions and ceremonies taking place. It is Buddha's birthday might be, as I believe we said, April 8th. According to our search via DuckDuckGo, once again, we have the Red Day holiday. I think it's May 5th. I'd have to go back and check the calendar, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it is it's an annual event, actually, and it's called, what is it? Putsanim Oshinnal is how you say it in Korea, kind of deal. My pronunciation still is not very good. Although
It's
I do
better
speak a little bit.
Don't worry.
Putsanim Oshinnal. Kind of deal. Yesunim Oshinnal, I think, for Jesus, same kind of deal. Christmas, but yeah. So it's a seasonal event, and really it goes on. They have throughout the streets. I haven't seen too many in place yet. Maybe when we head out today, and I hit this, managed to make my way over to this elementary school, there'll be a few more lanterns and sometimes
they should be
flags
playing
and things like that.
right?
Pardon me?
Yeah. They should be playing them around, yeah?
Usually is, yeah. There usually is. So just, I guess they haven't started yet. At least I haven't seen too many, or I just, the 3 poisons in Buddhism. If people want to write this down, it's kind of important stuff. Very helpful, very basic too. Real simple Buddhist psychology. Ignorance, lust, and hatred. Kind of deal. That's what we're looking at there. Those are the 3 poisons of your mind. You want to fuel those things within yourself. You want to really see what the end result, what the karmic product is. I know I have in a big way in the past, and these days I try to kind of transform that in the sense of making better decisions. I don't drink as much as I used to. That's for damn sure. Back
Same here.
Oh, geez. It just led me into so much trouble back in the day. Stupid things, I tell you, man.
Well, I was always a good guy. I never turned into anybody else when I got drunk. I was just me, just drunk. That's all it was.
Well,
so I never picked fights and did anything like that.
No, I was never that way. I was talking mostly how we become a little more stupid, maybe a lot more stupid, and our moral compass and bearings tend to really be compromised.
Be like erased.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and this is the thing. It's interesting to take note of. I know we were talking about weed earlier, and this is a big thing. Part of the Scythian tradition, of which Buddha was himself said to have been a Scythian prince, the Scytha, which they were very active along the Silk Roads, as I recall, even so far as to perhaps what we found out there not so many years ago in the Tarim Basin of northern, I guess, northwest China, the red-haired mummies of the Tarim Basin. What are red-haired mummies doing so far east? But they were there, and so yes, the Scythians. But one of the things, as far as it's the 5 or 6. There's, it's basic stuff, really. No killing, no stealing, no lying. Which is, I mean, doesn't every religion say that? Pretty much, no killing, no stealing, no lying. Although Islam, you're allowed to get away with lying to the kafir infidel. They give you a free pass on that one for some reason.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing. So if you can say you're a devout man, but you get to lie, that doesn't work for me. And then there's issues also with all the kid stuff and all that. It doesn't really work.
Well, I don't want to get too sidetracked here.
Yes, again, of course.
Yeah, it's important. I think what you're getting at there, to be a good Muslim, you're expected to live exactly in accordance with the ways that Muhammad did, which I would assume includes marrying little children. So
yeah,
I'm quite serious about that. When I put that out there, basically. So to be you are required. That's what the Quran dictates, that you must live in accordance as a man. I'm not sure about the women exactly, but the men, every last little thing, every little jot and tittle. So, and if you don't, you're not a good Muslim. That's really the case. So that's why, this radical extremist views and ways of interpreting religious doctrine or scripture, it's a big problem. And it's really, and having said that, quite interesting how just with Buddhism, even Catholicism for some reason, I find is a lot more flexible than the rigid Protestant approach or worldview for some reason. In Korea here, a lot of Protestants tend to be quite more rigid, inflexible than the Catholics and the Buddhists, who, as with the Taoists, just kind of, they go with the flow. Don't push back against the forces of nature, and be more, generous. And
some people
flexible.
just can't help it though. They think that they're forces of nature themselves, and then they realize that nature is way above anything that man can conceive, and they learn the lesson the hard way. The problem is they bring the rest of us into their stupid mess, and that's the problem.
Well, yeah. So, skillful means practical wisdom. Two more basic Buddhist tenets and ways of coping with life and its various, the situations that are thrown our way or that we find ourselves walking into. Practical wisdom, skillful means. Every situation's different. How do we diffuse a situation or address it in a way that will end hopefully with, positive results? So if we're not here producing good, positive karma, I guess there could be a neutral approach to things, but there is bad karma that is generated on an all too regular and routine basis throughout the world.
I would think
the word itself, a lot of people, do you know what the word karma means, Vinny? It's real simple. A lot of people don't get this one. They go into some long-winded roundabout way of explaining things, but it's one word. Any idea?
Well, for me, it's just desserts is what it is. What is your?
Those are the end results. It's very scientific too, if you think about it. That for every action there is a reaction of equal yet opposite effect. That is the law. Those are the simple Newtonian law of motion, if I'm not mistaken. So that's very much in line with the way that karma is said to operate within the universe. The word itself simply means action. So right. We do something or not, I suppose, right? But actions are critical. The Four Noble Truths, which people probably have heard about maybe from time to time. The first noble truth, all is suffering. The second, that the cause of suffering is desire. Third truth, in order to do away with or address the problem, the suffering issue, you have to eliminate the cause, desire. So focus on that third noble truth. Meditate on that, people, friends, folks, foes, and fellow pirate mateys. And the fourth noble truth is it just simply encapsulates what is known as the Eightfold Path. I'm just doing this all off the top of my head, of course, but so bear with me. Right livelihood. That's really important. You want a job where you're not producing or generating overly, negative karma. Right attitude. I mean, you don't go too far without a good attitude in life, right? So, so right livelihood, attitude, effort. You got to have good, make effort. In Zen, they talk about, what is it? The three greats: great effort. What the hell is it now? Great effort, great faith, and great doubt. Great faith, great faith, great doubt, great effort. So, which, if you think about it, those two are kind of a contradiction in terms, obviously, right? You have great belief in something, at the same time, great doubt. I think that's hilarious.
People forget that inaction also serves as action sometimes. So sometimes just those two, the terms in and of themselves aren't necessarily opposites, but they're states of being.
Come again?
I say that the two terms don't necessarily have to be opposites. It can be states of being. So that there's just there are places in the rung on the ladder, as you had put forth before. Not opposites, but just stages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the two, I think it's really great in a sense, the way that Zen tends to operate. You have this contradiction of terms almost. The Zen koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear? I think that's a Zen koan. And thirdly, yes. I think this is one that I actually presented to you the other day, more or less. It's an odd question if you think about it, but quite insightful as well too, to reflect upon. What was the true face of your original nature before your parents were born?
Right.
That kind of deal. It'll take you back a little bit if you kind of sit and reflect on what, or you can flip it around. I sometimes do. I'm not sure the exact phrasing, but what is the original nature of your true face before your parents were born? That kind of deal. So,
Right. I remember I responded by asking you, how would you be able to tell gravity? How would you be able to tell up and down in space? Because there's no gravity, right? So that was another one of those fun questions that we got to bend you about.
Yeah, that was another good one. I remember that. And I'm just actually going to turn our focus back now to the live chat. We have got, once again, the activity.
Yes, you see the question from Zane.
Well, this business, when is Buddhism going to be great again in Pakistan, Afghanistan, the current Silk Road countries, etc.? That's an awesome question. We're really living in the age of apocalypse, and especially where Buddhism is concerned. Thanks in large part. Apocalypse is, as I think we've talked about, my take on this, Vinny, apocalyptimism. I'm a self-professed apocalyptimist. What other way of approaching things is there really? Negativity and pessimism will get us nowhere, of course. So
right.
It's important to
the same old story, right? Yeah, it's the same old story. So we got to approach it with a new lens.
The history of Buddhism, it's quite something because it was lost to India for close to 1,000 years. Alan Watts described Buddhism as a stripped-down form of Hinduism, packaged and designed for export. Thanks to the effort of Emperor Ashoka, who, if people once again are interested in researching, there's a great legacy there, of course. What's known as Ashoka's edicts and pillars, really important things to look into if you are a historian of any sort, even just amateur kind of hobbyist type approach or way of looking at things. And he was asking about Afghanistan. That's as far as those pillars and the edicts did manage to reach back in the day. That was following on the heels of Alexander's generals, I guess, having his empire at the time being divided up among his generals following his death. Alexander had met with Ashoka's grandfather, Chandragupta, if I'm not mistaken. Just once again, just kind of riffing here off the top of my head, hoping that my brain does not fail me now. But I think that was his name. But they signed a truce, essentially, from what I understand, that Alexander decided not to push on any further. There was a river, maybe it was the Ganges or the Indus. Was there an Indus River? I know it was Indus Valley. But anyways, they finally called a halt to things, their military operations. And basically, yes, from that time, see, this is where we find the emergence. That's where Greco-Buddhism really began to take off in earnest. I'm sure up to that point there had been various travelers, people, traders.
See, that's very cool. I was not aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big adherent of Alexander the Great. I mean, I love the story about the Gordian knot,
Yeah.
No one can figure it out.
Right.
And he just cut it in half. Done. Just like that. Beautiful.
I think, step back. I think I got this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's really critical, because Zane, he really hit on a central issue here. And this really helps to unpack things as far as our ability to, the history of Buddhism. Once again, it was lost to India. I'm just looking here through the ship's library. I think we have a book dealing with, now where has that been stashed? There we go. Of course, I keep that close at hand where I can possibly manage. Charles Allen, The Buddha and the Sahibs. What a great book. That really, it's just not, it's only a few hundred pages, and it's a classic. If you can get your hands on that one, people, by all means. Charles Allen, The Buddha and the Sahibs. He would have made for a great guest. I was also thinking, we could have invited perhaps Robert Thurman from Tibet House, maybe next year, as well as Hyangkak Sanim, who I think Zane Ivey will be familiar with. Of course, he was, I believe, like a Yale or Harvard educated graduate who made his way over to Korea a number of years ago, back probably in the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And, so he was, he was a student of a very popular monk, head monk, top Sunim, as they're known here. I wish I could remember his name, but they have a really well-known mountain retreat that I have not been to actually in a number of years. Would be happy to stop off and visit again, of course, if ever had the time or found myself on the way with the opportunity to do so. But anyways, that being the case, his teacher passed away. Hyangkak Sanim became quite prominent, and you would see him lecturing in English. These are called Dharma talks, when, monks typically do this. I guess you sometimes have secular individuals as well who take a shot at things with some particular topic or theme in mind. But he did a really great job. It's interesting too to note how, when you compare the fire and brimstone of many of the Protestant pastors and preachers, they get really loud, really worked up and animated. The Islamic, the imams, I guess as they're known as well too, very a lot of just venom and acid that seems to flow and spew from their mouths, which is, in comparison, when you have these monks that appear on TV, they're very laid back, just calm.
They seem to be so at peace, right?
There's no yelling. No, they don't raise their voice. They don't get too excited about too many things.
Right.
And, but Hyangkak Sanim, he left. And it was a real scandal back just a couple of years ago, because it made national news. I guess they more or less reported it accurately, surprisingly, because of his stature. But he left in protest of the high level of corruption throughout the various monasteries and monastic orders and just the Buddhist institutions that exist here in Korea. there's a lot of money involved, as you can imagine. Any organized form of religion, once again, generosity being the first step on the path to wisdom. People who are committed to practicing that, you can do that in many ways. We do our thing here. Our dana, our offering to the world, frankly, are the pair of live streams we put together each and every week. The news events, World Pirate Radio News on Tuesday nights, and of course this Friday night weekly feature production. So all we ask, of course, is that people consider joining us either on Patreon and helping to support us there with the premium items that we put together, typically the after shows, the Rogues Gallery after shows, as well as PayPal donations, of which we've received a small amount. That's great. And the minds.com tokens too, as an option to consider. So with half of all of that we managed to put together going directly back to charity, the grassroots people that we look out for, Carolyn Rose Goida, James Heydrich, Richard Whipple over there in Poland, UFO political prisoner John Ford, Christina Taft, who recently lost all of her worldly possessions, including her mother, in the fires that swept through the Chico region. Paradise in particular was her hometown. So weren't you around for that when we were helping to get the word out with respect to her?
I think I must have missed that one, unfortunately.
Oh, you were just a little bit, you hadn't quite fully engaged us back at that stage. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I want to go back to this business of, once again, Silk Roads, how Buddhism found its way from India to the east, essentially. That's where it first went. You can bet that there was a lot going on in Alexandria and Egypt, of course. Those were the crossroads, people. Look at the libraries of Alexandria, which is something I consider one of the greatest crimes ever inflicted or perpetrated against humanity. Hey, check this out. First of all, it was these radical, once again, we're talking these nutty fundamentalists that just lose their minds. They're Christian monks who were radicalized, apparently. Back in the day, they went through the first phase and stage of obliteration, wreaking as much destruction as possible, burning the books. And you can bet there was people that were trying to do what they could to secret them away, protect and so forth. And then a few centuries after that, I'm not sure when this initial attack around took place. It might have been about the 4th century or so, if I'm not mistaken. But the Muslims then came in, phase 2, and took care of business in around the same time, I guess, just prior, in fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to when they went into India under the Mughal kings and empire that was established there, and just laid waste to so much, both the libraries of Alexandria, once again, and throughout northern India. That's where Buddhism really, the Brahmins already had a bit of an issue with them, of course, because it's a hegemony type deal, of course, but Nalanda was the most famous university, I guess, at the time up there in the Gandhara region of India, which is really something to think about. There was actually, speaking of Gandhara, and I know we're jumping all over the place here, but I'm just kind of freestyling, doing whatever I'm able to as far as connecting the dots and unpacking as much information and trivia or just little fun facts as possible before we wrap things up here. Another 30 minutes or so basically is what we're looking at, so we really got to unload here in rapid fire fashion and leave it up to our listeners if they want to go out there and do the legwork to dig around and look into things a little more deeply. I'd be fascinated if they were able to, or I should say I would very much appreciate if anyone out there was able to present to me anything which clarifies more or less these issues, or any further maybe facts or trivia, historical anecdotes and the like. But yeah, so Helgo in Sweden, that was the Viking horde. Go ahead.
Oh no, this is the new media. The new media is not just sitting around being entertained by buffoons. Rather, it's getting information, passing on information, gathering information, and just making something of it. I think that's what we're looking forward to.
We're the fifth estate, man. We're the underground, independent, online, open sourced, pirate network, basically. WPRPN. It's the People's Pirate Network. This is the flagship, of course. Myself, Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder, episode 140 of Pirate Radio Podcasts. Great to be here. Hope everyone's week has gone well. Looking forward to enjoying their Saturday and Sunday, the weekend, as it were. It's Saturday here. I'm just actually going to be heading out the door as we wrap up here. Have a bit of a last-minute rehearsal, which I don't think... I think I got the songs down pat. Okay, not so bad. I think I got it all worked out. On bass is what I'm doing, actually. So that's a lot of fun.
Anything to do with the topic at hand, by the way?
Well, we got those 2 Korean folk songs we're performing. So, don't even ask me. Like, if you knew the name, if you brought it up, I could tell you what it was. But other than that, I just, Korean sometimes just it goes right over my head. I can speak a little bit once again, but these family names, the real or the full names of people, like we got Choi and Park and Moon and that sort of thing. But the first names often are difficult, so it's one of the reasons we focus on giving kids or just students that we work with English names. I'm kind of big into that. Also, in the same sense of, well, it's like if I'm in Korea, so I have a Korean name, of course, and just in the way that the reason we give them English names is that because if they meet other foreigners and they tell them, "Hi, my name is Choi, Myung Gak or something," and it's like, what the hell? What? It's like, I can't. Some names really just just a little too difficult. I don't know what it is. It's the way some people's brains function. If I could do it, I would, but it's a little too much for me at the best of times. But when they meet other foreigners, then they have the opportunity to say, well, that's my Korean name, but just call me Bob or Susie, right. And maybe, Susie Park, and oh, Susie. Oh, okay, fine. Hey, Susie. So it's a lot easier and things go smoothly, and, it's a good way of connecting with people. I'm happy to use my Korean name. My Korean name is actually, if people want to know, I could say, I suppose, but I'm just, it means river bluebird kind of deal. Kang Parang Se.
Very nice.
I play that up a little bit. Kang meaning strong. It also means river. So I play those up with people I work with and engage. But Parang is blue. Those are my eyes. And Se is bird. So blue eyes, this guy flying as a bird from another country to Korea. Here we go. Speaking of blue eyes, that Bodhidharma, it's interesting because you look at the actual Chinese characters for what he was all about. It literally translates Bodhidharma, Chinese writing, those hieroglyphics that they so very much love and use to communicate with. It means Bodhidharma, the blue-eyed barbarian, basically, is it literally does mean that. So the blue-eyed barbarian, huh? So who really knows who Bodhidharma was? But some guy from abroad, of course, maybe India, I guess, although I really don't know. There are a few blue-eyed people out of India, I guess. But anyways, that's who he was, and just something that's interesting to take note of. Along with the fact, we're kind of just circling around here, and once again, just freestyling. I got some notes, but, why bother?
Or
Jesus.
you have anything that's anything noteworthy?
Well, check this out, man. Not too many people stop to consider this, but in my estimation, I've looked into it greatly. I've studied as many religions and philosophies as I could possibly manage, more or less, and that's why I've chosen, Dharma, Buddhism. It works the best for me. I think I'm influenced by Taoism and Confucianism in some respects. Not Neo-Confucianism. I prefer like the traditional approach of, the way he kind of laid things out there. But
Yeah, I'm not sure I like anything Neo,
no,
except for Neo in the Matrix. That's about it.
Neoplatonism, and yeah, we got to change this stuff around, I guess, huh? So, but also Christianity to a certain extent too. And it's interesting to take note of who was Jesus. There are documentaries out there, and researchers, scholars have concluded themselves. This is something that I just intuited really because of my research before I came across any formal claims that clearly laid it out there. But he was a Buddhist monk, somebody who was missing for 18 years. The Protestants will say, the preachers and pastors typically claim that he was busy working construction with Dad for 18 years, and that was it, just going around building houses in Palestine,
This is a great thing, I think that people made a mistake refusing him as a Messiah, because he was, I think he was a perfect one for them, and it's to our eternal sorrow that he was refused.
The cornerstone, the rejected cornerstone, I guess is how it's often referred. Is that not correct?
I believe so.
I'm not sure if that's a purely Masonic reference or not, but I would imagine they kind of like that idea. Anything to do with cornerstones, Masons are all over that sort of thing. So, but I think it's just a biblical type reference. So, just looking at the slideshow.
You see the comment from Svetlana in chat and Nethead? Yeah.
Romans and China. Well, we were talking about that earlier, Nethead, the Tarim Basin, the mummies. I'll do a little DuckDuckGo search here. Everyone else, of course, you could do the same as well too. But it's real. It's a big story. There's some great documentaries out there, and documentaries covering this whole business of how Jesus was a Buddhist monk. 18 years he's gone. He comes back. They're perplexed. The people of the region, is this not the carpenter's son, the Nazarene kind of deal? And what are these foreign teachings? Foreign. Where did they come from? Drop out from just out of the blue, down from the sky, just up from the ocean, or where exactly? So love, compassion, turn the other cheek. In the days of old Moses, it has been said to you, the original Mosaic tenets and code, right? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I say unto you, they strike you, turn the other cheek, that kind of deal. So
that's fun.
It's something to think about, definitely. And compassion, love for your enemies. What's that all about? Like,
right?
What? Are you serious? Come on, aren't we supposed to kill our enemies? I thought that's what we're supposed to do. Go around and just kill our enemies. But Jesus came with this new approach and way of looking at things, and you can bet that he really stirred up the pot. Another thing too, let's not forget, is the I and the Father are one. Well, that's interesting, because if you think about it, so are we. Everybody and the Father or Mother or Source or whatever name you want to give it is one. Why? That's called non-duality, people. That's a very basic Indian tenet. On top of that, where did the brother Thomas go? They drew lots after Jesus miraculously rose from the dead. They all, got together, broke bread, and had a little conversation. And Thomas, the doubter, who was, I guess, a brother of Christ, where did he go in drawing the lot for? It was India, was where he found himself ending up. So, in fact, India has one of the oldest Christian, I guess, churches or settlements in the entire world, along with Syria, if I'm not mistaken. But even more so, just within the context of things here as well, too, it was discovered back around the time when Buddhism was making inroads and impressions upon the European peoples and finding a European audience, thanks in part to this book that I referenced earlier, Charles Allen, The Buddha and the Sahibs, the work that these engineers and architects of the British Empire did, the surveyors and so forth. They stumbled upon lost temples in the jungle, shrines, and just a whole multitude of ancient civilization that had been forgotten for, I guess, like around 1,000 years at least, if you can believe that. So that was really this central to, as I was referencing earlier, the apocalypse. I don't think I was all that clear, but people, you hear that word, a lot of people, they get triggered. It does not mean, that it's not the intent of what you're supposed to do, get all worked up, but the apocalypse in Greek simply refers to a lifting of the veil. And so that there are revelations that do occur. Light is being spread throughout the world. People are getting turned on and woke.
That's right, waking up.
Well,
right.
And what does the word Buddha mean? Do you know what it means?
No. It means no. I don't know exactly.
Do you know the Jehovah's Witnesses? They got a great magazine. They got a couple, I guess, but one of them goes by the title "Awake," and that's what the word.
The Buddha means awake.
That's what the word Buddha means. It just means awake. So
gotcha.
The understanding, the belief, of course, is that we're all sleeping here. We're all asleep in the matrix, and it's the goal. The task is for us to wake up and to get the hell off the wheel of rebirth. Bodhisattvas, of course, they reject that. They, for the sake of the, helping people in the world, as did Christ. He was like this huge bodhisattva, of course. They decide to return to the world to be of service to others. That's the only reason.
See, you want to know what's weird? See, they lived the movie They Lived. That's my Buddha. You know how that works. It's kind of weird. Because I should have known Buddha meant awake, but it's more of a they live thing for me. It's like a they live and we sleep, but we are now awake. I hope that made some sense, and maybe that was a little too weird.
Well, yeah, I've seen They Live. It's a great movie, and I guess, yeah, sure. You put those glasses on, suddenly you see things the way they kind of almost really are, and the way that we're being played. So
yeah,
sure.
And the thing now, I don't even need glasses anymore. I really don't.
So
the veil has lifted, as you said.
Lifting of the veil.
Yes.
So, all right, I'm going to just casting our gaze here back to the slideshow. Some great pictures, of course, mapping out the Silk Road routes from ancient times: Kashgar, Samarkand, Dunhuang. The Jesus Sutras, speaking of which, the Nestorian monks, first it was these early monks coming out of India who they met the Taoists on their journey to China. Those are the first people, I guess, they came into contact with. And they very quickly noticed that a lot of what they were talking about on both fronts was very similar. So they engaged in this practice and phenomenon. It's a matching concepts is the term. Koi, I think is how it's said, which just means that, hey, you've got a term for enlightenment. Oh, well, we do too over here. It's this, and you got some term for whatever it is that you want to come up with. Basically, just make something up, I suppose. So wisdom or what have you, and this ended up matching a lot of the concepts and tended to get along quite well. historically in China. In fact, you could subscribe to Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, everything all together, and there was no problem in that whatsoever, just because everything seemed to flow along so smoothly. There was no big deal. Now, when the communists came along, a little different story, I guess. The reason being, of course, is because, they're the state religion heads, and that's the ruling religious, say political, but really it's just another cult. It's a big, cult that, people have, it's,
The problem is they have the backing of the state. And
well,
so,
yeah. Uh-huh. That's a big
so they're
problem.
close to your club. That's a problem.
Well, look what they've done with the Falun Gong. That's just
Yeah.
awful. That's just
I know.
outrageous. It's it makes me wonder, like, how human are these people really that go about doing these sort of things, the harvesting of organs, and
See now, what I think is I don't ascribe that to humanity. I ascribe that to demonic forces. I mean, that's principalities and powers. That's not; those aren't people indulging in those practices. The reason I say that is there's no direct result, positive result for ingesting all that stuff. I think the only things who benefit from that are demons, not humanity. I think you can sit there and eat organs all day. It's not going to make you a Superman, but it's going to feed the demon inside you.
yeah, you're big into that. I know the whole business of adrenochrome and the transgender issue, which is quite something to reflect upon, most definitely. I guess
And I don't want to derail the show with that at all. No, but I just think that whole thing, that whole province, that's a province of demons and nothing to do with humanity. All that evil stuff going on.
You're kind of right. I actually concur, because once again, my whole thing is this: what has come to me via ancient Greece, this concept of eudaimonia, the good demon within, is literally what it means, and that's essentially one of the goals in Buddhism. I was told quite early on, when I attended my first little kind of meditation group back in university days. It was a Tibetan Buddhist group that I was fortunate enough to make my acquaintance to, and pick up a few things along the way there. So, but what are the gentleman who was sitting and just presenting his Dharma talk, as it were, said that one of the main primary goals in Buddhism is just to make friends with yourself. Just do that, people. Can you make an effort? Or how difficult could that possibly be? Making friends with ourselves, the good demon within. From the Greek tradition, Greco-Buddhism, it's about 800 years altogether. Once again, going back, starting from this time, the era of Ashoka, Alexander the Great meeting with his grandfather, Chandragupta, I believe, once again, if I got the name straight. And from that time, just a real blossoming, a golden age of sorts, really, that has been lost to a large part of humanity, that we don't hear enough about at all. And that's one of the reasons we had invited Todd Jackson to this week's live stream. We were hoping to hear a little bit more from him about these matters, but he couldn't make it, unfortunately. We just got in touch with him right at the last minute, and I can't say I really blame him. So, guests, typically we like to give them more notice than that. But that's just the way things went this week, because of just really a lot of things on the go here. Basically, Aaron Wadsworth, not sure what the story is there exactly. Maybe he's, who the hell knows? I'm not even going to speculate, but people, they got urgent matters, personal deals that pop up. He had said that he would be dropping by, making an effort, so who knows what the deal is. But Dun Huang, just kind of casting our focus and gaze back to there. This is critical stuff, people, that the Nestorian monks, these ancient Christian brothers, who I'm not even sure if they exist anymore. Do you know? Have you heard of the Nestorians?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I think this is via the Dunhuang Caves. If people look at that on the map, they can hopefully see that there. One of the pictures we have in the slideshow is pretty much, I think, well, just in the northern region of China, really making, as people would make their way along those areas of the Silk Roads. And there was many routes that went either north above the Tibetan plateau, basin, what have you, and there's others that took a more southerly approach or trajectory. If people look at things, what they have there on the map, Tibet, that would be a tough call, I think. Really, not too many people making their way into Tibet back in the ancient times, I do not believe. Although it could be mistaken. It'd be interesting to see if we could find any stories that would maybe address those issues. So, but that's typically how it went. And the Jesus Sutras, that's what I'm going to just check out here right now. I had brought it up earlier, so encourage anyone, of course, who's interested in this whole business to look into it. Last time I ran a search, I actually had a bit of a summary come up here, so let's see if we can do this again. Well, no, not getting the same search results. Jesus Sutras are early Chinese language manuscripts of Christian around 1000 AD, when the cave at Mogao near Dunhuang, in which the documents, etc., etc. Mogao Caves, the Diamond Sutra, Diamond Sutra, and the Jesus Sutras stand out among the scriptural treasures found in the caves in the 20th century. So this is, once again, Age of Apocalypse is what we're talking about here. And yes, they were, I guess, Nestorian documents, it looks like, according to the information we're being presented with here. So
that's good. See, I learn something new every day. So I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, well, I'd like to look into it a little more. I've got a book here, actually. Well, I should say we do. The ship's library, actual physical, paper bound and produced books. So it is the Jesus Sutras. It's out there in the other room, actually. But been meaning to get around to sinking my teeth into it. I think it'd be quite fascinating in the sense, I do believe you could very much see the Buddhist influence, because there's so much of the syncretism taking place, the to and fro, and the synthesis, where rather than trying to wage war on certain ideals or principles, that people would, just based out of general reason, I suppose, say, hey, this is a good idea. Let's run with this and see how it goes. So, because once again, with Buddhism and Jesus too, what was he all about? Traveled the region, Palestine and who knows where else exactly, but all about trying to help people, healing, And one of the things it talks about was he traveled in the capacity of someone who would work to cast out demons, and that for me ties back directly to what I was getting at earlier, this whole business of eudaimonia, the good demon within. That's the ancient Koine term. And that's so essentially, I'm looking at in the you could say, like, it's interesting, the shamans that are popping up here in the slideshow, that kind of approach, but an ancient sort of like a psychologist or a psychoanalyst of sorts, someone who, he was a therapist, and really that's, looking back to what we brought up earlier, the Theta Vadan, Theta, Thera, therapy, therapy, so the elders, those were the original founding sect of Buddhists back in the day. So the story goes, at least. See,
they're more etymology. That's it's great stuff.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like I looked up sutra while you were discussing.
Yeah.
So that of course is a text in Hinduism or Buddhism, often a collection of aphorisms or formula. So that's that's more and more fun stuff that for everybody, because you mentioned the Jesus Sutras. And then, of course, everyone knows the Kama Sutra, but no, you don't go into the root of the word. So what does so sutra really is just a bunch of it's text, it's knowledge. That's what it is. It's logos.
Well,
okay.
And logos.
Logos is,
hey, man, you know what that means, don't you? Logos.
Absolutely. That's what logos is. Reason it's knowledge. Is what we are.
Okay, sure. That's one way of looking at it. In fact, I've, for the longest time, sort of my way of looking at things is we've got these terms, Dharma, Tao, and Logos, or Logos as you pronounce it. And those three, for me, these lofty kind of ideals, philosophical, abstract, intellectual, however you want to put it, spiritual ideals, cosmic really is what they are. But it's the same thing. I think in many ways, people who've grasped onto them are trying to explain and kind of talk about pretty much the same thing. The word logos, to me, it just means word. And when you got, once again, these fire and brimstone preachers talking about the word of God, actually they're usually they've raised their voices, quite
I'm talking about the word of God.
And they grab the Bible and they wave it at the audience. It's the word in the word of God. But what they're not telling you is that the word of God, that's not the word of God, I do not believe. It's secondary, very secondary. The real word of God is the logos. And that, to me, is everywhere. It's like,
Amen,
it's not just inside some magical, special little book.
No, that's not. No, the logos it's you and I conversing right now. That's logos right there. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Communicating to everyone else. This is all logos. This is not chaos.
The Tibetan tradition, they refer to the meeting of two minds. That's a big kind of deal with the student and the teacher. Not saying that either one of us is a student or teacher necessarily. We're just two guys talking.
I'm the student tonight. I'm clearly the student tonight. I have no problem with that role. It's just that's a problem. People don't understand. When you have a role, just deal with it. That's how it goes. Some people I want to be the chief. Well, you can't be the chief. Okay, I'm sorry. You don't get to be the chief tonight. Just deal with it. That's what the problem is. I want to be the chief. Well, you got to go through the motions to be the chief. You just don't get to be the chief. And I guess maybe some people do get to be the chief, right? That won't start.
You got to serve somebody. Bob Dylan. I'm not sure if you ever heard that song or not. I think there's a reference.
Oh yeah. You got to serve somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, it may be the devil, it may be the Lord. You gotta.
Well, we know who he's serving, brother. Yeah, unfortunately, he admitted to Ed Bradley, the chief command.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a devil message. Give me come on, I don't buy that. That's just a bunch of spin.
Well, listen, we all hope it's not, right? But
man, come on, gee, look at his Christian, that whole era that he went through in the '70s, Saved and Slow Train, and there's a couple other attempts to great works and productions that he put together. So no, I think his heart's in the right place, and
his heart's in the right place.
He's not a totally evil person or anything. I don't believe that at all. He might be kind of greedy. I think he's kind of greedy, actually, maybe, unless he was joking.
I didn't know he was. I didn't know he was a greedy guy.
One story I heard, and he might have just been joking about it too, because you got to think context, and it might have just been it was like a joke, or he was for real. He's like, yeah, more money. But Axl Rose went backstage one night after, I guess it was like a Dylan show or something, and he got to meet Bob, and it was during the time that he was covering, their Guns N' Roses covered his tune "Knocking on Heaven's Door" from what was it? Pat Garrett. Exactly. Billy the Kid, the movie they put together back in, I guess, the mid '70s with Chris Christopherson and a whole number of other. So exactly.
Sorry, you have to use it to go with that, guys. But,
good, yeah, good, well done. So, but what he said, he was like, yeah, Bob, hey, I really appreciate this song. It's just awesome, and thanks so much. And Bob replied basically by telling him that he didn't really, the song was really, it meant nothing and really was not so important as just was the money.
Oh
I don't
boy.
care. I don't care about the song. Couldn't care about the song.
What a
At all.
buzzkill,
Just
right?
give me the money. Just I just want the
He
money.
do the song, right? He's backstage and figure, hey, listen, what a great homage, right? Isn't that kind of cool? It's like, there's nothing, man. Just get out of here. That's the thing. That dude deflated my entire night. I'm gonna go shoot myself in the head with something.
Well, but at the same time, come on, we weren't there. You got to get things in
No,
context.
no,
But
no. I do these things. Unfortunately,
might have
I
been.
can.
I mean, Dylan is a great. He's a real, like as with John Lennon, a real fast, quick mind, and he's a joker.
My life wouldn't be half as rich without the music that I got to grow up with. All the classic rock stuff. I mean, I would not be the person I am right now without it.
Oh, Oh, yeah, and so Dylan was an influence then, was he?
Oh yeah, him. Yeah, I mean, all those guys.
All right, sure.
Guys.
Well, we'll get more into that at some future date. Of course, don't want to get too sidetracked here, distracted. We are in the final few minutes. We're kind of winding things down.
I know you got to take care of those kids, brother. Yeah, have a great time.
Oh no! It's it's a musical gig here. We're doing a live performance here at some kind of festival type, like a venue out near historic.
Yeah, awesome. All right.
It's kind of out in the country there, near a really famous, actually. Speaking of Buddha and so forth, historic location, which now it's a partly museum and partly historical, Korean. There's a few national treasures there. In fact, they not so long ago, speaking of apocalypse, once again, love coming back to this theme, and that's why archaeology is so great. And I guess, what is it, Google Maps? How is it that they have these satellites now that just, I mean, you can find anything pretty much, I guess, can't you? So that's a big help in... these are game changers. History is being rewritten here on the fly. And that's one of the things, as with science, orthodox science, that if people are not open-minded enough to realize that, wait a minute, there's potential that the story could change here, possibly, that becomes a problem. So what we found here in Korea, this location where I'm based out of, not so far away from where this all took place, was that there's... hidden inside a, how would we describe this? It's a soktap. It's like a stone kind of pagoda tower type deal that hidden. I think they ran an X-ray of the structure and found that there was something inside. That's how they came across it. But that there had been hidden, and it was a vase. It was an ancient gold. It was a gold vase with remnants of the Buddha, supposedly, sari, as I believe it's known in Korean, along with a number of gold plates that completely rewrote history. So, and at the same time, it's interesting to note, because right around this time, there was a huge battle that took place at this location between the Shilla and Paekje armies. This, if we want to get into history, wow, we could really go there for sure, because it set off a whole series of events, as one might imagine, that with the fall of Gaia, which had occurred just a short time prior because of these failed peace treaties, that there was attempts to come together and negotiate peace, that it didn't work out. Gaia fell, and then Sheila and I guess power vacuum of sorts, Sheila and Paekje go at it, and Sheila comes out the victor. The royals from the region flee, make their way to the west, and then a number of years later, once again, they have to relocate even further, and then finally, after that, make their way over to Japan. From there, the house, the clan, the Soka clan, which, interestingly, if you look at it, to me sounds a lot like Sokamuni, or as is known in Korean, Sakyamuni, Gautama, the Prince Buddha, that the Soka clan, the founder, Prince Shotoku, was the founder and of this dynasty of sorts, really, and really worked to do what he could to perpetuate and spread Buddhism throughout Japan. So I'm not sure what existed up to that point, probably a form of shamanism or something like that, much as was the case here largely in Korea. Shamanism, of course, continues to be a big sort of deal, something that we could have got into a little more had Aaron Wadsworth actually managed to make it. But yeah, there's so many great talking points here and places we could have gone. We never went into the Helgo Viking horde that was discovered. Apocalypse, man, 47, I guess. Roswell, Death of Crowley, Birth of Israel. Those years, 47, 48, big sort of deal. But what they found was these remnants, these statues, and a few other little items, I guess, that were determined to have originated from the Gandhara region of India, buried in this Viking horde way the hell up in the northwest region of Scandinavia, Sweden, as I recall. Yes, I think it's Sweden, Helgo, for sure. So, and if I'm wrong, if I'm off base in any of this, please, listeners, it's up to you to help set me straight and let us know where we went astray here, of course. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this week's live stream. I do have to make my way out the door here eventually, but yeah, I think we did an okay job there. So, go ahead.
About Nestorianism.
Come again?
Ned had put a nice comment in about Nestorianism.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I don't know too much about it, but they seem to be kind of hip, and okay, I guess, and it's cool that they were the ones who, the Vatican, as I understand, they sent them east on an excursion to travel, to engage, and to, see what they could accomplish. So, yeah. But anyways, I guess we covered it all more or less. We didn't get into Bamiyan, which is where we found, that was the Taliban, if I'm not mistaken. They blew up that giant ancient Buddha back around just prior to the terror attacks in 2001. I think it was around 2000 they blew it up, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, right there, speaking of karma, it's like, oh, jeez. Now, this is not good karma. Let's put it that way, okay? So,
idea, I know.
Check it out, though, Vinny. Hey, I had no idea. I'd studied Buddhism for years, and I had obviously not deeply enough, but had no idea that it had even made its way up into Afghanistan back in the day. No idea. So I guess that kind of helped to me to work that one out and connect the dots. And I think there's an effort now underway, a campaign to restore the, some replication of what was originally in place there. So, of course, radical Islam, they get really on edge. Anything that, as with the Chinese Communist government, the one-party type hegemony that they seek to have, put in place, that any competition at all in the marketplace of thoughts and ideas simply will not be tolerated. It seems to be what it all comes down to. But anyways, just any final, closing thoughts or comments, my friend?
No. Everyone, I wish everyone have a great night. I'll give a last shout out to Nethead, Svetlana Savankova, Zane Ivy, Joe Eminon, Free Cosmos, Tommy Shutter, Mr. A, and of course, Nethead.
Yeah, a lot of our regular supporters there definitely doing their part to drop by and make their presence known. So their efforts are always very much appreciated. Without them, it would just be the two of us here talking to ourselves, I guess, basically. So they're really what.
But no, it's the sum. It's the sum of our gathering that makes the magic. So
the three jewels of Buddhism actually are the Sangha, the Dharma, and the third one. Oh, geez, here you go. See, this is where I'm failing now. I tell you, the three jewels, and Sangha, Dharma. I'll remember the other one later, I guess. But the Sangha are just the people. That's it. The community kind of collective group that, like parishioners or people that come together and attend Dharma talks or just want to engage and be a part of things. So I guess for a day at least, they are honorary Sangha members to what we've managed to produce here this week. And geez, I wish I could remember that third jewel. The three marks of existence: suffering, impermanence, and the third one is actually lack of any inherent substance. That would be the ego, that which Zane alluded to earlier, in the sense of it's being kind of extinguished. And ego does not typically respond well to that either, I have found. It has a bit of an issue. It's like, I don't want to die. I want to stay and keep doing this crap.
Did you mention Annika?
Huh?
Did you mention Annika? I went and looked.
Change, yes, impermanence, of course, yes. So sometimes there's a little bit of confusion between the Pali and the Sanskrit, but sure, Annika, change, and the relation between that and desire and suffering, and how we want certain situations to be a particular way, but we can't always have that. And when we do, what happens? How do we feel if we can't get our way? How does a little baby react?
Well, it has a tantrum.
Right.
Exactly.
Sure. There you go. And once we get our way, then it's like, oh God, we got to keep this. We have to maintain this. And then when it's taken away once again, it's the same kind of deal where we completely lose it, of course, because we miss what we had and what was seemingly so good to us. So have to be able to learn to deal with all this and just take a very, is it equanimity? Is that the word I'm looking for here? Just a kind of peaceful, calm, insightful, and wise approach where there's a total lack of attachment, really. That's the bottom line, frankly. You can't have that attachment or there's going to be issues. So that doesn't mean you can't act. You're fine. People are free to act.
Things, right? But sometimes you can't, and what you have to be able to deal with that.
God, I love that. What is that? The old expression go, God grant me the
strength.
God grant me the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So,
amen, brother.
I mean, wisdom exists in a whole multitude of traditions, frankly. It's maybe what some would refer to, I think Aldous Huxley called, many have over the years, not just him, but the perennial philosophy. So, so that's why I try to stay open-minded. And, I don't even know if I'm a Buddhist, to tell you the truth. I'm just a guy. I really do believe we live our own religion, and we're fortunate to be living in a time now where we can choose what resonates with us best and separate the wheat from the chaff, kind of deal. The beeswax,
the wheat from the tare,
bullshit from the beeswax, or however you put it there. So, I'm sorry, the what?
The wheat from the tares.
Oh, what is that? What are tares?
Well, there's a useful part of the wheat, then there's the useless part, which is the tares.
Okay, all right. And thank you to Nethead for reminding us. Yes, don't forget to upvote. That's always great. We need subscribers too. We're kind of slowly making our way along here, inching up to 1,000 supporters basically via YouTube. It's quite an ordeal that we're having to face here, but tell your friends, get the word out if you can, to show a little support. If you think what we put out on a twice a week now is what we're doing with the news on Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 out on the East Coast. Same kind of deal here with the Friday night feature shows. So yes, like, comment, share, remind over on minds.com. WPRPN, patreon.com/WPRPN. Always looking for more supporters over there, although we're also thinking of maybe transitioning over to, is it Subscribestar? Is that the outlet that they have put together?
Yeah, this is Subscribestar. I want to get on that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
And PayPal, we've had a little bit come our way there. So recently, via Forum Borealis, actually. Al B, we had on a couple times in the past, looking to maybe have him revisit us here once again, just prior to launching Operation Secret Santa 2019. So that'll be later in December, potentially, is what we're looking at here. Always working on juggling up the schedule or getting things in place. Got a few great guests coming up here. This Tuesday night, we got Daniel Lewis Crumpton. He's a cannabis activist, courtesy of, I believe, his outfit is known as Canna Sense. He's going to be able to present to us a lot of great information, including what his thoughts are regarding prohibition as it stands currently in South Korea. Not the North, not the tyrannical, repressive North, if you can believe that, but the free, open, democratic, and freedom-loving South. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
So you know.
It's quite a story there. So, yeah, just say no, K-N-O-W. That's a big issue here with the ignorance and the fear, the way those two relate to one another, and the mind control, just the total fuckery that has been rolled out, implemented since 1976 in South Korea. A lot of people suffering, a lot of people needlessly dying, all because of this greed-driven, fascist policy, which essentially it's just a bad law, and
I like to call it hot garbage.
Pardon me?
I like to call it hot garbage.
It sounds like a Massachusetts. I can't do Massachusetts. Boston. The Kennedy's out of Boston. They're hot garbage. Don't. I can't even. No. Let's not go there now. So, and then next Friday. See, this is a special event this coming Tuesday. Typically, it's our news evening and segment. But what we're going to do, because of the scheduling issues, we're going to bring Daniel on board and have him lay things out there. Take a fair, really decent quality look as well as to what we find taking place throughout the West. On various fronts, what has occurred over the past couple of years. And I myself just continue to wonder, how long is it that the government here in Korea can maintain this false front? The lies, essentially, because they've been lying to the public for so long now on a number of issues, and this is just one of them, which is really it's pathetic. It's inexcusable, and it's immoral. It's there's not too many good things you could say about it. I wish I could, although they have rolled back legislation a little bit, so they're kind of ratcheting things down slightly, in the sense of, well, if you're gonna die, we'll let you maybe get some decent quality medicine here via this plant that has been placed here on this planet where we find ourselves presently residing, via the creator, or just creation. So we'll get more into that this coming Tuesday. Friday night, then we're going to follow things up. The idea is, it's a world roundtable. We have Jennifer Knight dropping by once again, along with Dr. Peter Eugene. Those are the two people we've reached out to and contacted at the present moment and are looking forward to bringing on board. So that being the case, I guess we've pretty much run the gamut. Hopefully have not forgot anything here. Of course, I got to head off to a band practice here just prior to us setting out and putting together, presenting a couple tunes to the listening audience out there, not so far from where that ancient temple site resides now, with a museum and the like. Great place also, not just to take a walk and tour over the course of like a weekend drop by or visit, but lunch is always quite delicious as well too. Traditional Korean food served up in a number of the different restaurants they have in the area. So that being said, thank you so much, Vinny. Much appreciated. And we'll definitely do this again next year. I always love going into the whole business area of the Dharma and the Silk Roads and ancient history. In fact, I forgot to mention this, but there was a nationally renowned shaman. I know we brought the whole topic of shamans up a little earlier. It didn't get too much into things. We would have if Aaron Wadsworth would have dropped by. But she herself seemed to think that I had actually lived as a Chinese monk a few hundred years ago, is what she told me.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that was a little interesting sort of claim or assertion that there's no way of proving it, I don't think. But, we'll work on that, see what we can do to maybe gain some more insight into the matter. She might be right, but I don't want to tarry on any further. I do have to go. It's been a great time. Everybody out there, your support is so much appreciated. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Yes, those are the three jewels of Buddhism. Exactly, Zane. Correct. Thank you very much. Great faith, great doubt, great effort. Those are the three greats of Zen Buddhism, so on and so forth. It's been a great live stream here. Episode number 140 of Pirate Radio Podcasts. On behalf of Captain Long John Sinclair and all the rest of the crew here aboard the Robin Hood, including Vinny from Brooklyn. Until we meet again out in the high digital seas, I'm your host as always, the Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Happy sailing.
Aye now, there we be. Having carefully looked over each of our navigation panel instruments, checking every level, switch, dial, cable, knob, and pulley, by all accounts and indications, we indeed see it's time, once again, to drop anchor inside Mystic Bay, and draw an end to yet another week of World Pirate Radio Live. Remember, if you're looking for a little more animated online action, keep in mind we've likely got yet another great free-flowing Rogues Gallery after show coming up for the next hour in one of our more premium exclusive and remote digital underground online pirate hideaways. Also, if you yourself have a new, novel, intriguing, or otherwise underreported idea, unique individual, or pressing item in mind, be sure to either drop us a line directly over on WPRPN.com or fire us a quick email via pirateoneradio@gmail.com. We're always open to exploring fresh creative suggestions, intriguing guest ideas, cutting-edge discussion topics, and captivating themes. WPRPN.com network subdomain links are also now available. Great for artists, musicians, podcasters, bloggers, social media personalities, or pretty much just any old landlubber looking to boost their online visibility, presence, and reach. Basic personal profile accounts can be launched for just $60 per year. Staking your claim now helps not only strengthen you and the network, we're also looking out for the little guy. That's right, folks. As much as half of all WPRPN's profits are redirected right back into the hands of the people who really need it most. Community charity. After all, we are the Robin Hood. You can further embark on your own personal pirate journey by either liking, sharing, commenting on, subscribing to, or just following us via virtually any mainstream social media platform, including Twitter, Facebook, Google+, or Minds.com. So don't forget to become engaged. Until we meet again out on the high digital seas, I'm your host as always, the ship's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Tally-ho.